The Unseen Visitor. Chapter 1. The Uneven Shadow. I still remember the day I moved into apartment 314 like it was yesterday. The heavy boxes, the sweat-drenched shirt clinging to my back, and the overwhelming sense of relief when finally locking the door behind me. It was supposed to be a fresh start in every way possible. A new city, a new university, and finally, independence from the watchful eyes of parents I had grown too old for. The building stood as an imposing structure, its walls covered with ivy that seemed to cling onto each stone like a desperate attempt at holding on to what was left of its history. My roommate, Alex, greeted me outside with a warm smile and led me inside to our modest abode. As he showed me around the apartment, his enthusiasm only fueled my excitement. The room was painted in shades of pale blue and gray, which I found comforting, calming. The first few days passed without any incident, or so I thought. But that night changed everything. Lying awake under the blanket of darkness, trying to force myself into sleep after a draining orientation day, I saw it. A shadow moving across the wall. Quick, silent, and unexplained by any light in the room. My heart pulsed against my ribs as I watched it glide along the cream that colored paint from one corner to another with no discernible pattern or purpose. No beam of moonlight could have cast such an outline on the wall. I strained my eyes but saw nothing else. The apartment remained still, the only sound coming from distant voices outside and the occasional hum of traffic passing by in the distance. My pulse raced as it disappeared into thin air right before my eyes. Shaking off the encounter as a product of exhaustion, I told myself it was just fatigue playing tricks on me. Days turned to weeks with more subtle occurrences. Books rearranged on shelves, an odd scent lingering in the bathroom that reminded me of old, mildewy books and muffled whispers when I was alone. Each incident stung at my psyche like a series of pinpricks. Alex never seemed bothered, even when I mentioned it to him. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. One night, feeling parched, I made my way to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed by my bedroom door, something caught my attention. It was slightly ajar. The hinges creaked as if beckoning me in when I opened it further. A chill crept down my spine, but curiosity won out over fear. My bed was unmade and disheveled. Sheets tossed every which way, like someone had rummaged through them. I stepped closer, squinting into the darkness. No signs of trespassers. No footprints or fingerprints. It hit me that a stray breeze could have disturbed it. But how? The windows were closed. The days blurred together as classes and homework consumed my time. Then, one evening after class, I fell asleep early, as if pulled by an unseen force. I woke up with a jolt in the middle of the night to find myself alone on the floor next to my bed. But it was made, neatly tucked under crisp sheets. My head spun, and my mind reeled for a moment as reality struggled to catch up. The bedroom door still hung ajar. Faint whispers resonated from the hall, almost like they were calling out to me. I rose with a hand trembling against the dresser. No shadows or outlines this time, only a sense of being watched. My bare feet padded across the floor on cold tiles as I stumbled towards it. In the living room, a shadow, much darker than before, sat at our table, facing away from me, an outline that seemed to have substance and depth. It turned slowly, and my heart stuttered. An inky mass coalesced into a figure with a hooded head. The image vanished as I opened my mouth to call out. Another night, another strange occurrence, but each event was further removed from the next. Chapter 2. The empty bed. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had taken me during those hours. But in the morning, there were no signs of any struggle or entry. It all felt unreal now. That evening, I barricaded myself in my room as night fell. The clock struck 12 when the first chill crept over me. My eyes flew open to find a silhouette standing at the foot of the bed, unmistakable and tall, even though it was huddled under the hood. A sense of dread swelled within me. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, dialing Alex's number. No answer. Sweat trickled down my temples as I edged closer, the darkness between us seemingly alive with an icy presence. It slowly turned to face me, and my heart skipped a beat. Underneath the hood was nothing but shadows. No features, no contours. I reached out, and the tips of my fingers brushed against something smooth. The figure didn't retreat or react. It just melted away into obscurity like smoke. Panic set in as I tried to make sense of it all, forcing myself to breathe deeply. The next morning found the room spotless again, Alex's snores echoing from the couch. I knew then that it wasn't real. It was all in my head. But the following night, there it stood again, watching me with an unsettling silence. This time when I reached out, a hand clasped mine, warm to the touch and firm but lifeless. My heart pounded as our hands intertwined without me feeling any weight. Not that it mattered. I couldn't let go even if I wanted to. It tugged gently towards the door. The figure moved ahead of us, its pace inhumanly quick. As we passed through the apartment, a musty scent filled my nostrils, and the sensation of unseen hands guided me upwards on both sides, making it impossible to break our connection. On the landing, two doors loomed before us. Alex's room and the bathroom door we rarely used. I wanted to look at the hooded figure, but couldn't tear my gaze away from those clasped hands. It was pulled towards the second one. The bathroom door swung open on its own hinges, revealing a void. As we entered, a sudden gust of wind blasted me back, extinguishing the hallway light outside. An eerie cold seeped into the space, and I caught the scent of decay. A single bulb flickered to life above us, casting long shadows that danced across walls stained by time. In the center of the room, it halted and released my hand as one with a lost glove. I stared up at the figure, desperate for answers. Slowly, it turned to face me, raising its hooded head. A low moan escaped my lips as our eyes met. Black orbs staring back from beneath darkness. My breath caught in my throat. Before I could scream, light flooded the room once more, and Alex was standing behind us with a question on his face. "Hey, did you sleepwalk?" he asked, rubbing his temples. The figure had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. With all the stories of haunted apartments swirling in my head, I hesitated before speaking up. "Ion." His gaze narrowed, but we parted ways for our respective classes and routines. Each night, I waited for another visitation, praying it wouldn't come with him by my side. Chapter 3. The Last Whisper. Days turned into weeks of unease and unanswered questions. Every night, the shadow appeared with a single hooded figure, until one fateful evening when Alex found me huddled in his room, shell-dot shocked. The darkness had become more defined, like it was solidifying. It raised its face towards him. Then I felt an iron grip around my waist, pulling us towards the bathroom. Behind the door, a vortex of swirling shapes, and we were drawn into the heart of darkness. In that abyss, Alex's voice drifted out on the wind. "We're not alone." There was no time for questions, I was pulled through it with him to the edge of my sanity. The night after, Alex clung tightly as a figure raised its head. We were yanked back into our apartment, and with an inhuman force hurled towards the floor. As we rose together, he spoke for the first time. A presence. In that dawning of realization, I saw it fully. The apparition. Its face was obscured by a hood adorned with countless eyes. The air seemed to thicken, making speech difficult. It stepped back as one, revealing an eerie glow emanating from every pupil. They stared through us like 1,000 moonlit pools of malevolence and dread. The hood lifted. I screamed, but it wasn't the figure that faced us. We had been transported into the depths of its own darkness. A woman with eyes that felt like voids in my soul's core stood before us. Her features blurred as she turned to leave. A long cloak billowed behind her. Alex gripped me so hard I panted, but still I reached out, wanting answers. Come. Together, we stumbled through the vortex into an underworld of swirling shadows and darkness. The hooded figure watched us enter with eyes that were not its own. In this new realm, it stood above a woman, a queen as black as coal. She spoke in whispers too low to understand. She beckoned once more before disappearing back into my room. When I opened my eyes, the bathroom light flickered off and on. The hooded figure turned to us. It raised its head, faceless except for those unblinking eyes that felt like staring at the abyss. We fled in silence until we were back in our beds. In dawning light, I stared at Alex. Two of us stood at my door, motioning wildly and speaking silently through the glass. After that night, the figure stopped appearing, but it seemed too late to go back. I had become entangled in an unspoken reality. Now we only saw visions of her and other apparitions. It was time to face what we'd been shown and find our way out, or succumb forever within the shadows. The Queen's eyes held my gaze as Alex nodded. We fled together into the black unknown, searching for a way out, from a reality that had become two worlds at once. Now, she spoke with a voice like 1,000 hollowed oaken logs and wind in the night. The shadow has shown you to what lies within. In the silent hours that followed, our bond became our only anchor as we navigated the underworld together, through realms of darkness that seemed both beautiful and terrible. The Black Queen led us through swirling shapes, her cloak billowing behind. When light finally broke on a new day, I opened my eyes to find myself home, but Alex wasn't by my side. A hooded figure watched me, silent, motionless, as if waiting for what was to come. In dawning light, the figure's face turned, and I stared at her. It was the Black Queen, an angel of darkness. We were led back into our living room by a single set of eyes that never left mine. The silhouette stood watching in my bed where Alex would have been. In the morning, the creature watched us sleep for what felt like hours, as if waiting. It vanished with dawn's first light, leaving me to wonder. Had it all been a dream? In the kitchen, I found him sitting at the table, staring down at his hands in horror. We should have stayed asleep. Then he spoke in hushed tones of shadowy worlds and silent whispers that echoed within dreams, where the Queen showed us the heart of our deepest fears and desires. A figure watched us from my bedroom door as I stared into its eyes. It was waiting for me to wake up once more.